Jerry Crow here of the Pacifica Historical Society and host of this week's show, Footprints of Pacifica, where we explore the lure and lore of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. This week, the topic is the book Sam's Castle, written by Bridget Oates, who is here with us, and she'll be telling us all the details that are found in the book, and also how she became a writer. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you.
All right, let's begin with a little background on your life. You told me you were born in San Jose, and tell us where you grew up and how you wound up with the degree that you took in college.
Okay, yeah, I grew up in Willow Glen in San Jose and then moved over to Los Gatos for junior high and high school. And then I went off to UC Santa Barbara, where I studied history and film studies.
Excellent.
So.
And how did you get started initially in your writing career?
In Santa Barbara, I wrote, I took an internship with a writer, and I wrote for The Independent, which is their local paper. And I basically started writing for all the magazines there for free, just so I can get experience and get clips. And then I moved up to San Francisco and took a writing job with Sega.
Mm-hmm. And you knew from very early on that's what you wanted to do in your life, didn't you?
Yeah, from third grade.
Yeah, that's amazing to have focus that early. Good for you. What particularly intrigued you about the castle?
Oh, I was just so intrigued that there was a castle at all. And when I looked up on the hillside after I moved to Sharp Park, so I started asking around about it, and then I started doing some research online and just finding out little tidbits about it, but I couldn't find too much information. So then I tracked down Pete McCloskey, and that's really when things got started.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I skipped over something I meant to find out from you, and that is how you came to live in Pacifica in the first place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was living in San Francisco, and a coworker of mine was born and raised here, and she always talked about how great Pacifica was. And so she invited me down, and she drove me all around, and I just loved it. So I chose an apartment that I wanted to go look at, and it wasn't available. But once I walked around the area and I saw the seawall, I just decided to take it sight unseen. I just loved it. So. Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
And so this is Bridget's book on Sam's Castle. So now back to how you first got started on the castle theme. I think that's an interesting topic for sure.
Well, I was lucky I had talked to Kathleen Manning, who suggested I talk to Pete, and I couldn't find him. So there was a guy who had blogged that he had worked with him or something. So that's how really my research was very sort of haphazard like that. It was by lucky chance that I found this man, and I wrote to him and told him I wanted to write a book about Pete's grandfather's castle. And he wrote to Pete, and next thing I know, I was having lunch with Pete. And he was telling me all about his father and his grandfather, and it's exciting.
Well, we don't have a picture of his grandfather, but we've got one in here of his father, Paul McCloskey Sr., which I will show the folks.
Yeah, even actually, neither Pete nor his sister have even ever seen a photo of their grandfather either. So, there's not one to be found.
I guess he was possibly shy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then we got an excellent picture of Pete McCloskey, I guess with a good pal of his, Paul Newman. Mm-hmm. I got a kick out of that shot. Mm-hmm.
So that's from his documentary, Leading from the Front. And as I was telling you, that's sort of how my whole book experience got started. Was I was flipping channels after I had made the lunch date with Pete, and this documentary was on PBS. And so it really immersed me in his life and just gave me a great background for getting started.
Yeah. Incidentally, he wrote a book, at least one book, on his experiences in Korea. Mm-hmm. And he was a Marine, fine man.
Yep.
Let's see. So the McCloskey period here. Oh, maybe we ought to talk a little bit about actually building the place.
Okay.
Yeah, start at the beginning on that.
Okay. Yeah, Henry Harrison McCloskey was, he was really traumatized by the quake, the 1906 quake. And so he decided to take his family out of San Francisco, and they actually lived in San Carlos. They were one of 12 families that lived in San Carlos while the castle was being built. And so he was a lawyer for the Ocean Shore Land Company, among other things, which is also a subsidiary of the Ocean Shore Railroad. And they sold him on the idea that Pacifica was going to be this big, bustling town, sort of a Coney Island with casinos and a promenade along the beach, and all these exciting plans were in store for Pacifica.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when he got started on the building, and sounds like it was quite a process. He used all like the best of the best at the time, European building standards, which is probably why it's still standing today.
Oh, it's absolutely solid. And when we have the castle tours up there, we make a big point of that.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't see any damage after over 100 years of California existence.
Yeah, with all the weather and everything, it's kind of a miracle.
And the interior is special too. The original contractor went broke,
Mm-hmm.
and so Henry McCloskey contacted Matthias. How do you pronounce his first name, I wonder? Matthias Anderson.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Matthias Anderson.
He actually had come to what was Salada Beach back in the day. And he started his fabulous building skills on Anderson's Market, what was called Salada Mercantile back in the day, and the Little Brown Church, and then then he was contracted to work on the castle. And his woodwork is stunning. It remains stunning today. All the redwood interior, and the stairs. I was able to get his memoirs from his grandson Jim Cohen. And he had said that he had started the project with another builder and was left to finish the project alone for over, one long cold winter. So he just was up there in the drafty castle by himself, putting in all the beautiful wood.
This is a picture of Mr. Anderson and his wife, Bertha.
Mm-hmm.
And was it the baby Karen or her sister in that picture?
That is Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, sorry, Kate. That's Kate.
Okay.
Yes, and that they were actually the castle love story.
Mm-hmm.
I was so pleased to find that, because I absolutely knew there had to be some kind of romantic love story associated with the castle, which of course there was. So Bertha was hired as a cook for the Hickok family, who were the family after the McCloskeys, and Matthias he worked his Salada Mercantile, and he furnished the Hickoks with food. So he would bring up food for her to cook, and they just fell in love. So.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the original Mr. McCloskey died prematurely, one would say.
Mm-hmm.
So when then did the next owner come into the picture of the castle history?
Yeah, the Mrs. McCloskey, she sold the castle to the Hickok family and moved to Buttonwillow. And some have said that she traded the castle, but there were some conflicting stories there. But the McCloskey said that she actually bought it. So, she bought their
Mm-hmm.
ranch in Buttonwillow.
I looked up Buttonwillow, and it's about 25 miles due west of Bakersfield, so a long way from here.
Yeah.
Big change in environment.
Absolutely.
Here's Mr. Hickok looking kind of ominous.
Yes. I had contacted San Quentin to get their penitentiary photos, and I got home late one night, and that was waiting for me in the mail, and I opened it and I just shuddered. I just thought, oh, he looks like a scary man. But yeah, he had said that he was setting up the castle as a place for his patients to convalesce, with the sea air. That was the popular idea at the time. And then there was a husband that his wife was missing. And so he alerted the police and said that she was last seen at the castle in Pacifica, or in Salada Beach. And so the police went in and found 3 girls that had been operated on by Dr. Hickok. And that may or may not be his real name. You know, I found out through my research that he had stolen someone's identity, and he was being researched, or he was being, you know, sort of monitored by the state board for quite a long time.
There was an actual Galen Hickok, but my understanding is that with the exception of a stint in the medical corps during World War I, he never left Kansas.
Right.
So
Exactly.
this clever local version,
Yeah.
what he called himself Thompson sometimes, I think, and
In Zangwell.
maybe Zangwell was what he was born with.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
So he winds up in San Quentin after
He got the maximum sentence, 5 years at the time, and then his son followed suit not too long after. His son was a chiropractor, but he was also giving abortions, and he ended up in San Quentin as well. So
Yeah, he should have known.
yeah, that's when the castle transferred to the Eakins. After, yeah.
Well, you had you said you contacted Jim Cohen, who was grandson of Matthias Anderson,
Yes.
and he's still somewhere locally down the peninsula, I guess.
Oh yes, yes, he's local.
And let's see, I think we need to move along a little bit to cover all of this. Joe O'Brien was the son of Pat and Nora O'Brien, but I skipped the Eakins, didn't I?
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, during the 20s and 30s, the Eakin family acquired the place, but they followed a period with Mr. M.L. Hewitt. And that was during the heyday of the Prohibition, wide open days.
Yeah, Chateau Lafayette.
Yeah,
That's what I called it. And I actually got the business card from Jim Cohen. The Chateau Lafayette was the card that Mr. Hewitt had made.
this one?
So that was the front, and that's the back. I was very excited to find that as well.
And that particular part of the history went from about, what, 1920 to 1924 roughly, I guess. And then Mr. Hewitt died, I think.
Yes.
And that's where then that's where Max came back into the picture. Max Hickok.
Yeah.
Until his activities got him in trouble.
Yes.
Okay, then during World War II, although the place was owned by the Eakins, the Coast Guard borrowed it, so
Yeah,
to
they
speak.
leased it for a year.
And protected our coastline.
With their war dogs. The war dogs were housed next door, I guess, at what was the Talbot Hotel back then.
Ah,
So they set up
Okay.
kennels over there.
all right. Then the place goes back to the Eakin family after the conclusion of the war. Holly Eakin dies prematurely again, too bad. And then Sam Mazza acquires the place in 1959.
Well, the O'Briens had a little stint in there.
That's where Pat and Nora
Yeah.
O'Brien.
Yeah.
And you
The
you
artists.
talked to their son, Joe.
Yeah, and he lived there as a young boy and climbed all over the place and looked for hidden passages and all kinds of things. I found him online. There's a castle, or there's a website called Castles of the U.S., and there was already a page set up for Sam's Castle, so I posted on it, and he wrote me back, and it was fantastic because he had all these photos and stories, ghost stories of the castle. Yeah, he added quite a bit to the book. So.
Well, we have a video clip of a party that was in celebration of the completion of the book, and then we'll see that and then talk a little bit about Sam himself, because he was a very interesting character too.
Okay.
So if they're ready with the video clip, we'll switch to that.
Great.
I came to lead the toast for Bridget because it's one thing to do a lot of research. It's another to turn it into a book. My grandfather built it in 1906 after the earthquake. But Bridget has done a tremendous work. There's some famous people here, incidentally. The father of the California Redwoods, Martin Linton, who flew his own plane until he was 92, and that's only 2 years ago. I saw for the first time, I came up here in 1967 to run for Congress, and my dad, he lived till he was 16 in one of these turrets. There was no heat. Every morning he hiked up to the hill, took a trolley into downtown San Francisco, where he went and graduated from Lowell High School. But I was determined that I wanted to carry this array, and I found Pacifica one of the most interesting towns in America. It has no tax base. There are no automobile agencies that provide 3% tax income. There were no businesses, and if you hiked up one of these valleys, you found a labor union leader living next to a corporate president from Silicon Valley, and a little further up, a plot of marijuana growing in the hillside. But the funniest thing, Sam Mazza, who owned this, used it as a storehouse for all of the theater props in San Francisco. And if you wanted to have a Shakespeare play, you asked Sam, and he sent a truck down, and they carted up a King Lear's throne. And I remember when he first showed it to me, it was all helter-skelter. Much of it is still here. But he had Sally Stanford's bed from her brothel in Sausalito, which was famous in our time, next to a Catholic crucifix, next to the King Lear's throne. And all this stuff was all together, and you never got to see it. But what Bridget has done, as I say, it's an incredible piece of research. And through it, I got to see the first picture of my grandmother I'd ever seen in her book, which has just been published. So I hope everybody, Bridget, you ought to be over there signing.
I will.
Yeah. All right. Bridget will go to the corner. But let's have a champagne toast to a successful authoress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And the father of the Redwoods.
Yay!
All right, undertakers, over.
All right, Bridget, tell us a little bit about how Sam Mazza came into the picture. A fascinating guy. This is one of my favorite pictures of him, as showing him as a young man.
Yes. Reportedly, he was driving down the coast with his girlfriend at the time, who he later married, and he said he had had one too many gin fizzes, and he looked up at that pile of bricks, as he liked to call it, and he decided to buy it. And it had been empty for about a year, and there were 4-foot-tall weeds, and the windows were all broken out, and so they were asking $35,000, and he got it for $29,000.
Well, we're certainly glad he did.
Yes, yeah, he really saved the castle.
Yeah, he had to do quite a bit of fix-up too, I think.
He did. Apparently, he put 20 grand into it right away.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, he loved it, I'm sure. And there are many more pictures and stories in your book that we don't have quite enough time to cover in the detail I'd like to. So people are encouraged to get a copy. With the minutes we have left, say a little bit about the process of creating a book.
Okay. Well, for this particular book, there's a photo quota. So I really couldn't start on the writing until I had all the photos, and there were 180 photos required. So that I just poured myself into research, whether it was at the Pacifica Tribune. They were fantastic. I did Google searches. I went to probably every historical museum in the Bay Area. The Coast Guard was invaluable. And so once I had my photos, then I just started writing. And I didn't really see the light of day for several months because by that point I was coming up against my deadline, and I just
Well, you must have
wrote.
had a pretty good mental image of the structure you were going to
I did.
produce, because that isn't a very long time for writing a book, is it?
No. I mean, I had been writing all along the way, but when it came to the final last few months of writing and polishing and all of that, but yeah, it was a full-time job for sure.
So you don't have any definite new titles in mind, but you've possibly got a few ideas.
Yes, possibly a few ideas. I'm hunting a few leads.
Okay,
so.
anything you can reveal, or is it better to keep them?
It's local, I'll say that.
Excellent. Well, we always like local topics covered.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Do you recommend that people go into the writing career?
Oh yes, it's fabulous.
They have to start young in the 3rd grade. Is that recommended?
No, the beautiful thing about writing, you can start at any age. Yeah.
All right, that's super.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about the end of our show tonight. So thank you very much, Bridget.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed this conversation with you. And I'd like to encourage people to check out the website of the Pacifica Historical Society, pacificahistory.org. If you have any questions about our activities, you can contact our president, Kathleen Manning, at 650-359-5462. If you're interested in writing to us, our address is Post Office Box 752, Pacifica 94044. And we've got time for a little more discussion. Let's see, what would be interesting that we had to skip over, kind of? We don't have a picture of anybody in the Eakin family, do we, to show?
No.
I was going to ask you a little bit about Pat and Nora O'Brien, who rented the place between the time that the Eakins finished living here and Sam Mazza found the place. He was a sculptor, was that it? Okay.
Yeah, he set up a workshop in the basement of the castle, and he put in the submarine window in the front door. The
former
portal.
porthole.
Yeah, the portal.
Yeah, it looks very nautical when you enter.
Yeah, I love that. So,
Well, I think that covers about all that we have. So,
Ghost story.
oh, ghost stories.
oh, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Naturally, a castle has to have ghost stories.
Yes. So
Good.
yeah, it was Joe that shared several of the ghost stories that his mother apparently had experienced a ghost in the main hall when she was going to her bedroom, which is now the weapons and religion room, off to the right as you enter the castle. But she apparently was walking towards a mirror, and there was like this white sort of blurry
strange
image in it. Yeah, so she backed up, and reportedly it moved past her and out the front door. And then the workers who were doing the refurbishing, when it had the scaffolding and all these things, they reported seeing a shadowy figure in the window as well. So,
And some professional, what would we call them?
Ghost
hunters came through with their instrumentation, and
the EVP.
they were convinced there were evidences, I think, of spiritual activity of some kind.
Yes, I think it's ghostexplorers.com or .net. You can hear the voices that they picked up. They picked up 2 men greeting each other. One said hi and one said hello. So,
Now that's strange.
It is kind of strange.
Can't explain the paranormal too well.
Yes, definitely. So,
Ghost story.
That's about it, I guess. Well, this concludes our show for today. And in closing, we tell you our motto is, lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. Was that